In a small town, life moved quietly. Streets were narrow, lined with modest houses, each holding stories that no one would ever hear. Among them lived James, a single father, whose life was a delicate balance of hard work and quiet sacrifice. Every morning, before the sun had fully risen, he was already awake, preparing breakfast for his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily was unlike any other child. She was deaf, and the world around her spoke in sounds she could not hear. Yet, she understood it in ways that no one else could. Her eyes shone with curiosity and joy, and her small hands spoke volumes in the language of signs. Every morning, she signed to her father, her tiny fingers forming words full of love. "I love you, Daddy." James would smile, his heart swelling, replying in the same language, "I love you too, my little star." Those simple exchanges were the foundation of their world. They didn't have much, but the love they shared filled every empty corner of their modest home. Today was different. Today was Lily's birthday, a day James had circled on the calendar weeks ago, a day he had dreamed of making special despite their limited means. He wanted to give her a small cake, a few balloons, something to make her feel celebrated. But as he counted the money he had saved after weeks of working 2 jobs, the truth hit him like a heavy stone. The bakery he visited had cakes that were beautiful and sweet, but they were far beyond what he could afford. His hands trembled as he held the small stack of bills, realizing there was simply no way. James walked home slowly, the weight of disappointment pressing down on him. Lily ran up, her eyes bright with expectation, holding a small notebook where she had drawn a cake herself. "Cake, Daddy." Her fingers signed eagerly, hope shining in every movement. James knelt down, his voice breaking as he replied softly, "I'm sorry, sweetie. Not this year." For a moment, Lily's smile faltered. She didn't fully understand, but she sensed the sadness in her father's eyes. She reached out, wrapping her small arms around him in a hug. And James held her tight. Fighting back tears, he whispered silently to himself, "Next year, I promise. Next year, it will be different." In that quiet, tender moment, the bond between father and daughter shone, brighter than any birthday celebration ever could. And though the day had begun with disappointment, their love remained unbroken, unwavering, and pure.
James knelt down, taking her tiny hands in his own. His throat tightened. "I'm sorry, sweetie. Not this year," he whispered, his voice catching in the quiet room. For a brief moment, Lily's smile faltered. She did not fully understand, but she felt the sorrow in her father's eyes. Without hesitation, she reached up and wrapped her arms around him in a hug. James held her close, tears blurring the lines between joy and heartbreak. He whispered to himself, "Next year, I promise. Next year, it will be different." Despite the disappointment, there was a quiet strength in their small home. James cleaned the kitchen, preparing a simple breakfast as Lily sat at the table, signing little words of encouragement, humming silently in her own world. She was resilient more than anyone could have imagined. Even in her silence, she taught her father about courage, about love, and about the ability to find joy, even when the world seemed unfair. The morning passed slowly. James went out to work his first job of the day, leaving Lily with a neighbor who often helped care for her. He carried the weight of guilt with him, feeling the sting of his inability to provide. At work, the hours dragged on. He moved boxes, lifted heavy crates, and performed endless chores that left his body aching. Yet every thought returned to Lily. Every moment was measured against the longing to see her smile on her birthday. By midday, James returned home briefly, bringing small items he could afford, a single balloon from a discount store, and a homemade card where he wrote, "To my shining star, love, Daddy." It was far from what he had envisioned, but it was all he could give. Lily's eyes lit up when she saw the balloon and the card. She clutched them tightly, her small fingers tracing the words with wonder. Even as he watched her, a part of James ached. How could he explain to her that sometimes love alone was not enough? That the world was cruel and yet somehow hope had to survive? He could only hold her close, letting the silence between them speak the words his lips could not. The afternoon faded slowly into evening. James prepared a simple dinner, the aroma filling the small kitchen. They ate together, speaking in the language of gestures and signs, their connection unbroken by the harshness of reality. Afterward, he pulled out a small notebook and drew a picture for Lily, a cake with candles, just like she had imagined. He signed to her, "Close your eyes and make a wish." Lily giggled, closing her eyes tightly, blowing out the invisible candles in the quiet room. As night fell, James tucked Lily into bed, brushing her hair back gently. He watched her sleep, her small chest rising and falling with each breath. A bittersweet smile crossed his face. He had failed in one way, yet succeeded in another. He had given her the most important gift of all, his presence, his love, and his unwavering devotion. He sat by her bedside long after she had drifted into dreamland, thinking of the life they led and the sacrifices he made. Tears slid down his cheeks silently. In the quiet, he whispered, "One day, my little star, one day, you will have everything you deserve." Outside, the night was calm. Stars twinkled faintly in the sky, silent witnesses to the struggles and dreams of a father who gave everything he had to a little girl who could not hear the world but understood love in its purest form. And in that moment, despite the pain, despite the disappointment, hope lingered, fragile, delicate, but unbroken. James knew that tomorrow the world would demand the same sacrifices, the same relentless endurance. But tonight, he held his daughter close and allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. Love, he realized, could sometimes be the only light in a dark world, and for him and Lily, it was enough to keep going. The morning after Lily's quiet birthday, the town was bathed in a soft golden light. Birds chirped in the distance, and the air carried the faint scent of fresh bread from the bakery. For James, the day began as it always did, with work, responsibility, and the constant hum of worry that never left his chest. But for Lily, life was full of wonder. She bounded out of bed, her little hands tracing imaginary shapes in the air, her eyes bright with the curiosity that only a child could hold. James watched her from the doorway, a bittersweet smile tugging at his lips. He longed to give her the world, yet he could barely give her bread and milk without worry. Still, he reminded himself of one thing: she was happy, and that happiness was his greatest achievement. Meanwhile, far across town, Ethan, a man whose life seemed untouchable by worry, arrived in the quiet streets. He was a billionaire, a man known for his wealth, intelligence, and philanthropic work. But beneath the tailored suits, the gleaming cars, and the relentless meetings, Ethan carried a rare trait, a heart sensitive to the quiet pain of the world, even the kind that many failed to notice. On this particular morning, Ethan had taken a walk through the town's small park before his charity meetings. The park was alive with children playing, dogs barking, and the gentle rustle of leaves. His eyes scanned the scenery, not searching for anything, yet everything he saw seemed to tug at a part of him that he had long ignored, the human side beneath the business magnate. Then he saw her, a small girl sitting on a park bench, her little hands moving gracefully in the air. She was laughing, though no sound emerged. Her notebook was open on her lap, filled with colorful drawings, cakes with candles, balloons, suns, and tiny stars. Something about her drew Ethan closer, not out of curiosity, but because of an inexplicable pull in his chest. A mixture of recognition, empathy, and the quiet understanding that life could be cruel to the kindest souls. Nearby, James sat on another bench, his eyes fixed on Lily. He was exhausted, his back hunched from the weight of his 2 jobs, but he refused to show it. To the world he appeared calm, composed, even content. Yet Ethan, observing from a distance, could see the tension behind the man's eyes. There was a story there, one of sacrifice, of sleepless nights, of love pushed to the limits of endurance. Ethan watched quietly as James tried to cheer Lily up after she noticed a small scratch on her drawing. He gestured in a gentle, playful way, signing words she would understand, trying to turn her disappointment into laughter. Lily responded with a radiant smile, and for a moment, Ethan forgot the trappings of his own world, the meetings, the deadlines, the endless pursuit of power. Here in this simple park, he saw the purest kind of love, unspoken, unmeasured and infinite. The billionaire lingered, not wanting to disturb, not wanting to intrude. Yet as he watched, he noticed something that made his chest tighten, Lily's tiny hands reaching out, asking for a birthday celebration, and James's gentle refusal. He could see the sadness in James's eyes, the quiet resignation, as he attempted to protect his daughter from disappointment. Ethan's heart ached. He had seen wealth and sorrow, privilege and struggle, but this quiet, dignified pain cut deeper than anything else. He moved a little closer, careful to remain unnoticed. James was speaking softly, signing words that Ethan could not hear, but the emotions were unmistakable. Love, guilt, hope, and sorrow all intertwined in a delicate dance. Lily looked up, her eyes meeting her father's, and Ethan felt a tear threaten to fall. He realized suddenly that there are moments in life so fragile and so powerful that witnessing them changes a person forever. For the next hour, Ethan simply watched. He saw James gather scraps of paper and make tiny gifts for Lily, a paper crown, a little drawing of her favorite animal, a small bouquet of wildflowers from the edge of the park. Each gesture was humble, yet it carried the weight of mountains. Each act of love, though simple, was profound. Ethan's heart swelled with admiration. He wanted to step forward, to intervene, to ease the burden, but he also understood the beauty of restraint. Sometimes the most profound acts of kindness happen silently, unseen, waiting for the right moment. Eventually, James and Lily stood to leave. Lily held her notebook tightly, clutching her small creations as if they were treasures. James held her hand firmly, walking with a quiet dignity despite his exhaustion. Ethan followed at a distance, curiosity mixed with a deepening sense of purpose. He did not know how or even if he should enter their world, but something told him that he could not walk away without making a difference, even in the smallest way. As they reached the edge of the park, Lily paused to watch a bird flutter across the sky. She smiled and signed something to her father, words filled with innocence and joy. James nodded, understanding perfectly, his heart swelling with pride and sorrow all at once. Ethan felt the sting of emotion sharpen in his chest. He realized that life often leaves its most beautiful lessons in these quiet, overlooked moments, moments of pure love, patience, and sacrifice. The billionaire returned to his car thinking. He had traveled the world, met countless people, and witnessed unimaginable wealth and suffering. Yet nothing he had seen compared to this: a father's devotion to a daughter, a child's joy in the smallest of pleasures, and the silent endurance of hardship with dignity. Ethan knew he would act. He did not yet know how or when, but he felt a resolve that was unshakable. The world had given James little, and it had given Lily even less, but perhaps for once, someone could intervene quietly, gently, and change the course of their day, their lives, even if only a little. That evening, James returned home, his hands empty but his heart full. Lily ran to him, her small arms wrapped around his neck. He held her tight, whispering promises in silence, words that only she could understand. And somewhere, silently, Ethan watched from a distance, unseen, planning how to bring a moment of joy into a life that deserved it more than anything money could buy. For James and Lily, life continued its relentless pace. Work, chores, lessons, and survival filled their days. But unbeknownst to them, a quiet guardian had taken note of their struggle. The world could be cruel, unfair, and relentless, yet kindness sometimes arrives in the quietest, most unexpected ways. And so, as the night fell over the small town, James tucked Lily into bed. She smiled, her hands signing, "I love you, Daddy." He kissed her forehead and whispered back, "I love you too, my little star." Far away, Ethan reflected on what he had witnessed, feeling something he had not in years, a quiet, profound hope. He did not yet know how he would act, but he knew that the smallest gestures could sometimes carry the heaviest weight. And perhaps, just perhaps, tomorrow would be the day that life changed for James and Lily forever. The next morning dawned softly over the small town, carrying with it the quiet hum of daily life. Birds chirped in the distance, and the air smelled faintly of wet earth and baking bread. For James, it was another day of labor and survival. He awoke before the sun, tired from the previous day's work, but driven by the one thing that mattered most in his life, Lily. Lily was already awake, her small hands tracing patterns in the air, her eyes sparkling with childlike anticipation. She had a quiet hope today, a glimmer in her gaze that even her father, exhausted and worn, could not help but notice. Despite the disappointment of her cancelled birthday cake, her innocence remained unshaken. She didn't complain. She didn't cry. Instead, she radiated a joy that was pure and unfiltered. James made breakfast with careful attention, even though their pantry held only the basics. Each action was deliberate, every movement filled with love, even in its simplicity. He poured her milk, cut the bread with precision, and placed a small plate of fruit beside her. Lily clapped silently, signing "Thank you, Daddy?" And he smiled despite the heaviness in his heart. Meanwhile, Ethan, the billionaire who had watched them from afar the previous day, had been working quietly behind the scenes. He had returned to his hotel room after observing the father and daughter, his mind racing with ideas. How could he make a difference without intruding on the dignity of their small, private world? How could he create a moment of happiness that Lily would never forget, yet leave James with the pride and love he so fiercely deserved? Ethan called his personal assistant and quietly explained his plan. Not a single word of the arrangement would reach the father or daughter until the moment was ready. Every detail had to be perfect. The cake, the decorations, the gifts, even the smallest touches that would make Lily feel like the princess of the world for just one day. But most importantly, Ethan wanted it to remain a secret. He did not want James to feel like charity had replaced his love. No, this was about creating joy, pure and undiluted, for a child who deserved it above all else. By late morning, the preparations were underway. A small team quietly arrived at James's home, setting up a humble yet beautiful birthday celebration in the living room. Balloons swayed gently from the ceiling. A simple cake adorned with candles rested on the table. Small gifts lay neatly arranged around it. Everything was chosen with care, from the tiniest detail to the overall atmosphere of warmth and love. Ethan watched the scene from a distance, a small smile tugging at his lips. He knew this moment would never be about him. It would belong entirely to Lily and her father. Back in their small home, James prepared for the day as usual, unaware that a small miracle had already begun to take shape around him. Lily, dressed in her favorite dress, twirled around the room, signing little words of excitement and laughter. James watched her, his heart aching with both love and guilt. He wished he could give her everything, and the reality of their limited circumstances weighed heavily on him. As he stepped out for a brief errand, Ethan's team made their final adjustments. They carefully hid the gifts and positioned the cake where Lily would immediately see it. Everything had to be perfect. Ethan observed quietly, marveling at how something as simple as a small celebration could carry so much emotional weight. He had wealth beyond imagination, but watching James and Lily, he realized that money alone could never create these moments. It was love, care, and attention to the smallest details that made them truly unforgettable. When James returned home, he found Lily sitting in the living room, her small hands resting on the table where the hidden cake and gifts waited. The moment hung in the air, delicate and fragile, like a candle flickering in the wind. He sensed something was different, though he could not yet understand what. "Daddy," Lily sighed, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Look." James's heart skipped a beat as he turned and saw the simple yet beautiful cake, adorned with tiny candles that seemed to glow even in the soft daylight. Gifts were arranged neatly, each wrapped with care. His hands trembled as he realized what had happened. He looked around, searching for a clue, but there was none. Lily's eyes sparkled as she approached the table, her small fingers brushing over the cake and gifts. She looked at her father and signed, "For me." Her voiceless laughter filled the room, and James felt tears sting his eyes. He knelt down beside her, his hands gently holding hers. "It's for you, my little star," he signed back, his voice thick with emotion. "For you and only you." The room was quiet except for the soft sounds of Lily's happiness. She clapped silently, spinning in her dress, her joy so pure that it brought an ache to James's chest. He could not comprehend how this miracle had happened, But he understood one thing clearly. This moment belonged entirely to Lily. And it was perfect. Ethan, watching from the shadows outside, felt his heart swell. He had orchestrated this secretly, respecting the father's dignity while giving the child a joy she so deserved. He knew that James would never allow charity to touch his life. Yet this subtle act of kindness had bridged the gap between generosity and respect. For the next hour, the room was filled with quiet celebrations. James signed the words of love and gratitude. Lily responded with laughter and pure delight, and the small cake became a symbol of hope and endurance. Every gesture, every look, every moment carried the weight of years of struggle, sacrifice, and love. As the candles flickered, Lily leaned toward her father, her tiny hands signing something that made James pause, tears filling his eyes. "Thank you, Daddy," she signed, unaware that this simple phrase carried layers of meaning beyond her understanding. James hugged her tightly, signing back, "No, thank you, my little star. Thank you for making my life worth living." Ethan remained a silent observer, content in the knowledge that he had played a small part in creating a memory that would stay with both father and daughter forever. He knew that life would continue to challenge them, that hardships would come, and that the world would remain unfair in many ways. But for today, for this moment, happiness had found its way into a corner of their lives that had known little joy. As the day faded into evening, James and Lily sat together, the simple cake now gone, the gifts carefully tucked away, and the warmth of love lingering in the air. They did not speak aloud. Words were unnecessary. Their hearts had communicated more than any language could convey, and somewhere watching from afar, Ethan felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. He had learned that true wealth is not measured by money, titles, or power. It is measured by the moments we create for others, the joy we bring, and the lives we touch quietly, with care, respect, and love. For James, the father, the day had been nothing short of miraculous. For Lily, the child, it had been the most beautiful birthday she could ever imagine. And for Ethan, the billionaire, it had been a reminder that sometimes the most meaningful things in life happen in silence, unseen and unacknowledged, but leaving ripples that last far longer than any fortune. As night fell, James tucked Lily into bed once more. She smiled, signing, "I love you, Daddy," her eyes heavy with sleep, but still filled with the light of the day's joy. James kissed her forehead, signing back, "I love you too, my little star." He sat quietly beside her for a long moment, savoring the warmth, the love, and the knowledge that today, for a brief while, the world had been a kinder place. Ethan drove away, the town disappearing in the rearview mirror, yet the image of the small father and his daughter remained etched in his mind. He had witnessed a miracle of human emotion, one that no amount of money could buy, no power could command. It was the quiet triumph of love, devotion, and selfless care, a lesson in humanity that he would carry forever. And so, the small house in the quiet town slept under the gentle glow of the night. Outside, the world moved on, unaware of the lives it had touched, the hearts it had softened, and the simple joy that had bloomed quietly, beautifully and with profound meaning. James sat by her bedside long after she had drifted into a peaceful slumber. He reflected on the day, on the kindness that had entered their lives, and on the quiet resilience that defined their bond. Tears streamed down his cheeks silently, mingling sorrow and joy into a mixture that only a parent could understand. For Ethan, the billionaire, it was a night of reflection as well. Driving back through the quiet streets, he felt a sense of humility wash over him. In his world of deals, meetings, and endless obligations, he had witnessed a moment of pure humanity, one that reminded him of what truly mattered. Money could never buy such moments. Power could never orchestrate such authenticity. Only love, care, and simple, selfless acts could create memories that last a lifetime. James's thoughts lingered on the faces of his daughter, on the laughter that had filled their small home, and on the silent hand of kindness that had made it possible. He did not know who had orchestrated the birthday surprise, nor did he need to. The gift was received, the joy was real, and that was enough. And so the small house settled into silence. Outside, the town moved on with its ordinary pace, but inside, in that quiet home, her father and daughter lay asleep, hearts full, souls nourished by love, and a faint unspoken hope that life, despite all its trials, could still bring moments of grace, beauty, and unexpected kindness. Tomorrow would bring challenges, as it always did. But tonight, for James and Lily, the world was gentle. And sometimes that is enough. The next morning, sunlight poured gently through the small windows of James and Lily's home. The warmth of the sun felt almost like a promise, a reminder that life, despite its hardships, could still bring light into even the darkest corners. Lily awoke early, her little eyes sparkling as they met her father's. She had slept well, her dreams filled with the joy of yesterday's surprises. Even in her innocent, silent way, she seemed to radiate a deeper happiness than James had ever seen before. James smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Good morning, my little star," he signed softly. "Did you sleep well?" Lily nodded, her fingers dancing with excitement as she signed back, "Yes." It was the best day ever. James's heart swelled with emotion. He knelt beside her, taking both her hands in his. "I know, sweetie. I'm so glad you were happy." Even though he still carried the lingering weight of their hardships, the memory of her joy filled him with a quiet, unshakable strength. They began their morning together, as they always did. Breakfast was simple, but filled with laughter and conversation through signs, gestures, and small smiles. For James, every movement, every glance, every moment with Lily was a treasure. Life had taught him that happiness was rarely extravagant. It was quiet, fleeting, and often fragile. Yet its value was immeasurable when shared with someone you love. Later that day, as James went about his work around the house, he noticed something remarkable. Lily was engaged in her own world, building stories from the gifts and little paper creations she had received. Her imagination had turned yesterday's gifts into adventures, kingdoms and far-off lands where she was the queen. And though she could not hear the world, her laughter, silent but unmistakably joyful, filled the house. It was a sound that James could feel, a vibration of pure happiness that resonated deep in his chest. Meanwhile, Ethan observed from a distance once more. He had returned quietly, not to intrude, but to witness the after-effects of his small intervention. Seeing the father and daughter together, their bond unbroken, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. It was one thing to give a gift. It was another entirely to witness the happiness it had created. And in that moment, he understood something vital. True generosity was not in recognition or reward. It was in the silent, unseen moments where love, care, and humanity intersected. James eventually noticed a small envelope lying on the kitchen table. It had not been there the night before. Curiously, he opened it, finding a simple handwritten note. "For the little girl who deserves the world. Keep her laughter alive always." No signature, no indication of who had left it. Only the simple, heartfelt message. James looked at Lily, who was smiling and signing her own version of thanks to him. Though they did not know the identity of the mysterious benefactor, both felt the weight of kindness that had touched their lives so profoundly. The days that followed were marked by quiet gratitude. James reflected on the events of Lily's birthday, on the joy that had radiated through their small home, and on the realization that sometimes life's miracles arrive when you least expect them. It was a lesson in humility, hope, and the enduring power of love. For Lily, the gifts and the cake were more than material objects. They were symbols of care, attention, and the magic that exists in the world even when it seems absent. Every day she revisited the small trinkets, played with the paper crowns, and recounted her imaginary adventures through her signs. And each time James listened, laughed, and marveled at the resilience and brilliance of his little star. Ethan, too, carried the memory with him. In the days that followed, he reflected on the event, understanding more profoundly than ever that wealth was not measured by possessions or power, but by the lives you touch. For him, the quiet happiness of a child and the love of a devoted father were richer than any empire he had ever built. Months passed. Life continued its relentless pace, but the memory of that day lingered in the hearts of all involved. James continued his work, often exhausted yet always driven by love. Lily grew with the same vibrant spirit, her world full of wonder, creativity, and the unshakable joy that had been nurtured in part by an act of kindness she would never fully understand. And though James never discovered the identity of the mysterious benefactor, He carried forward the lesson of that day. Sometimes the world gives you unexpected gifts, and they are not meant to replace your love, your effort, or your dignity. They are meant to remind you that kindness exists, that hope is real, and that even in a life marked by struggle, moments of profound joy are possible. One evening, as James tucked Lily into bed, he held her close, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing and the warmth of her small body. "Good night, my little star," he signed softly. "May your dreams always be full of joy and magic." Lily, her eyes heavy with sleep, signed back a simple, heartfelt phrase, "I love you, Daddy." James kissed her forehead, his heart overflowing with love and quiet gratitude. "I love you too, Lily, always.